Okay, as we turn 15, the well, the population of the New World is decreasing rapidly. Everybody got I haven't rolled for Portugal. They don't matter. France and England got low amounts of colonists. The Spaniards got a fairly high amount. Let me roll Portugal quickly. I forget they're in the game. They're the only one with a C monarch. Everyone else has an A. Well, they get $35. They're working their way up. Only 2 colonists. If they had an explorer, they could do something. And a 6 and a fluent middle class, another $20. Nice. Okay. So what did other people get though? France got a costly European war. No big shock there. Everybody's at war, right? But they also have the money to afford that. So in a sense, that's just their victory points draining away. They just lost 100 victory points this term. Spain got graft and corruption rife, which puts them in a very, very bad position. A lot of colonists, not enough ships to bring them all over as it is, and they probably need military very, very badly because they're facing a humongous, well, not humongous, but a somewhat larger English force than they actually have in the field at all. On France's side, theirs doesn't hurt them that much. On the English side, they got oppressive native policy, which ended up causing an immediate revolt here, and that destroyed their port there. Now, Hawkins is fine. The boats can always escape from a port like that. The English also get Drake now. He's there for the rest of the game for another military command. The real question, what I was talking about, hey, can England and Spain combine against France? I don't know. England's got kind of a desire not to, in the sense that Spain's just been weakened heavily by the graft and corruption issue. They're no longer as tempting an ally, yet they're interesting pickings. The problem is, this isn't a game like Stellar Conquest. You don't end up getting, or most war-conquering type, fairly simple, games with a lot of diplomacy on them. You don't end up getting something by grabbing a lot of the other guy's territory. You end up killing off his colonies, which doesn't make you any richer. Now, you do get political control if you can bring enough people in, but I think it is still in everybody's best interest, but France's best interest, to turn against France, because France has this pile of victory points here, and their economy's in pretty good shape. Okay, so the plans were played. The French built what must be the hugest navy I've ever seen in this game. Not just a lot of ships, like, God, I don't know how many. The armies as well. They have 10, 13, 14 ships. It cost them around 300 ducats. Well, over 200. The English spent 178, though, launching an attack into here. Well, not an attack, but throwing enough forces there that they feel like they can overwhelm South America, and the French there. With the Spaniards not having any troops and perhaps not getting any, the English feel safe here. They were going to turn against the deep south. There's a Spanish fleet there. The English go before the Spanish, so they were counting on lots of bounds for Hawkins being able to destroy that Spanish fleet, any forces that Spain tries to reinforce with. But they do see one, they probably can't handle this, that's the problem. They do see one more thing, which is there's a Portuguese fleet which landed for about half of Portugal's money, to try to grab the one thing they can get easily, and especially since they're hurting England. Portugal might end up, being able to at least survive with a little force in the Caribbean and produce a little extra money that way. That's going to put us in the time to start rolling the dice for the movement. Okay, things have gotten kind of impressive. The French land here, I'm still in the naval phase. The French land here, they hit this, they take it. They leave behind 5 armies, slide down. The best they could do was a 1-to-1 against either of these fleets. Now, facing Hawkins at 1-to-1 means they get a shift against them, so they didn't want to do that. So they hit this one in a kind of a drive-by shooting. Remember, you don't have the ability to just stand there and duel it out all turn, which is a little weird. They succeeded in sinking, I think, a ship of each on the 1-to-1 table. Great. Well, that ship doesn't hurt them as much because they had already cleared some space by dropping armies off, by losing armies in the initial attack, and then by landing here. Had they hit this first, they might have been able to have a 2-to-1 actually. I didn't calculate that out because I couldn't have gone back and hit this, and I really wanted to get some French troops here because I have more French troops here than the English do. All right. And Drake, I think, is pretty much at his... He has just about as many ships as he does troops, which means he can't dispatch more troops. He could have made himself just an explorer instead, which might have been wise because he can't even land his troops unless he's an explorer. That's part of the problem. But he wanted to defend the naval situation. Now, he may come over and try to attack the French fleet. French fleet is out of bounds now, which means they've got this huge fleet based in Brazil. That's not terrible if they can win this battle, but I don't think they can in one turn. The English fleet planning on landing and trying to defend Brazil. Now we're on to the English. Figure out what the hell to do with them. English naval operations interesting too. Now they, where were they? They were heading for here. They landed their troops here, sailed up, destroyed the Portuguese fleet, and actually captured one of the ships. And then with Drake, they came over, sailed into the galleon fleet. Remember, it doesn't protect things. Destroyed the entire Spanish fleet, capturing it all. And then went down the coast, destroyed all the Spanish colonies and all the French ones. The only ones that are left are the ones with fortifications or troops or whatever on them. Those I decided would be too tough a nut to crack. And of course I can't sail up the river or anything. But I am destroying the economies of my enemies here with the English. Now, the force here, probably not enough to defeat the French, but it may be enough to stop them from winning. Now, the South American fight. But Drake single-handedly, or Hawkins single-handedly, has pretty much turned the tide here by just destroying all those settlements. Of course, the French are now in Panama, and the New World's just in this total state of collapse here. Well, the Spanish, I probably would have paid for these guys to ship. I had plans for them to ship, so I forgot that. I'll have to take care of that. But the Spanish really don't have a lot of options here, and the Portuguese don't have a fleet anymore. Alright, the French army went marching up to attack in Brazil, and the other one attacked here. Now this one did perfectly fine. It had, I don't know, 2-to-1 odds, but here it was 1-to-1. It still lost a couple of units. Here it was 1-to-1, which is very random, but I had the much larger force. And remember, I said, hey, you kind of like to do that in 1-to-1 because the losses are in proportion to the total number of armies present. So you have an advantage by doing so. Well, it's not such an advantage if you roll a 6, where you lose 3/4 of the total and the defender loses a quarter. So the English now have a few troops left, and the French do not. The French army, well, they're going to get knocked out of Brazil. That's going to force these guys to have to return somewhere. They'll try to go to France without any bounds. And it also opens the Rio del Plata up to being attacked. And now things get silly. The English charge down the attack. They lost 1 unit taking this out. But that breaks the port, makes it harder for the French to get troops in. Rio del Plata's a lot further away. And the French don't have an explorer. Remember, Persona is supposed to come in somewhere around here, down here, making him a little bit more valuable. But I decided not to use him. It's kind of cool because I think the French are in the lead, although they've squandered a lot of their money, but so have the English. The Spanish channeled their little bit of gold down. Oh, I was supposed to buy, well, yeah, I was supposed to buy that back too. I forgot to buy all my bounds. So that's 4 bounds. That would normally cost 8. It's going to cost 16 now. Just because they've got the graft and corruption. Spanish have a pile of money here. The English are running with the money here. They're trying to stay away from the French, who are a little bit bigger than them. They have no way of getting more troops down there, and they're basically going to have to do something like the Amazon River expedition, which they may well do, in order to get that money back to where they exist. But you can see the New World is depopulated. There were thriving colonies down here, and here they're gone. This was kind of rich. It's down to 1. The Spaniards here, gone. Just, you know, warfare does this in this game. And again, I don't think that's terribly... well, it's hard to tell what would have happened, because there were no wars in this era of this type. They probably would have wiped things out, because remember, these colonies are very fragile in the sense that they require a constant upkeep from Europe to even maintain their numbers. They will decrease in size. There's no population growth in this game, and I think that is accurate. So if you did engage in war, it might be like this. It might be a destruction of those colonies. You had some of the pirates went in and destroyed some towns. Drake also did so. It might be along those lines, although when Drake hit, he didn't completely destroy it. But, you know, you can spread things out, and you're increasing the economic productivity. You can kind of abstract the decision away, or the justification away that way. We got a lot of fleets on the board who don't have the bounds to get home. They don't have to in the case of, say, the English. They can keep that there. They've got a nice little colony there, though, and it might be better to have the fleets back where they can ship more troops in. It doesn't make a lot of sense to have them here where they don't have any troops. Alright, well, here we are at the end of 15 going into 16, and what we have is really in a nutshell sort of what's wrong with this game, which is that it's a game. I think actually the historical argument and some of the hand-waving that I've done can justify everything except for one thing: the actions of the countries. The fact that this is a cutthroat game, that there's one winner, that it's worth risking the profits over all time, essentially, which is what's happening when you're spending these ducats of your colonial enterprises on expanding them and getting total control, is what kind of defeats the whole thing. Now, at this point, Portugal starts to say, you know what, if they keep this up, I've still got about a quarter of a game to go to just collect money, and maybe I can find some place to stick some people. I've got this rudder. I might be able to start a colony back here somewhere, and it's just too far away to be worthwhile for anyone. That's an intriguing idea, to try to collect value off of those who, you know, compared to those who are just destroying each other. Because there has to be some kind of stop in place. And one of those stops is if somebody just sits the whole game and doesn't attack anything. They are an impediment to there being a war of this nature. I think maybe the German bankers would do this as well. Because they will, you know, grow in comparison to the players who are losing what they built up. The German bankers are kind of boring to play, though. Might be neat to have them as kind of a baseline, and you know, hey, nobody won because they couldn't beat the bankers. Just something to prevent players from going into all-out war like this. After the Holocaust does that, by making it impossible to win, essentially, if you go to war, because your economy will crash. Of course, it's also impossible to win if you don't go to war unless you all work together completely and try to push somebody ahead. So I don't know about that anyhow. But yeah, we can see that even the French, it looks like they have a lot of money, but it's beginning to tell on them, and they're losing so much they can't really afford not to defend what they have. These things are worth 150 victory points each. If one player gains control of most of them, that would be a huge benefit for that player. Did this work out best for England or France? It's hard to tell. They both got their gains here. Spain is definitely on the rocks, but they could recover as well. They've got their little hidey hole here where, you know, they've got some points stocked away there. If they could get that gold back, that would be an interesting proposition. Anyway, come back later in the day. Entering into turn 16, and the countries are all kind of wearing down here. In terms of random events, nothing too exciting happened. The English lost a monarch point. They're down to a B, and the French get a temporary bonus to theirs. So the English may well drop down to, well, it's almost certain they drop down to third place on this one. Not sure what's happening in terms of diplomacy or any of that stuff. Got to give it some thought. Okay, England could not get Spain to agree to turn on France. They still, both sides still think France is in the lead. They're right. At least that's my opinion here. But the Spanish were unwilling to turn on them. They want to see England and France fight. And in fact, their plan is sort of along that line. Now, what happened was the English decided to go big, and they spent 110, I think, on an expedition to try to get this gold back. There's 125 gold there, so it should pay off. They have the slight advantage down here in Brazil with some armies where the French didn't have any. They were expecting an attack there, actually, to wipe them out of Brazil. But the wealth for France is over up here. The English wealth here, the French sent quite a large fleet, their entire force built up into the Panama region, which is exactly where the English went. You got big stacks there. Now, I couldn't use Drake for this because I need to set colonists in place. I need to set troops down to fight the port, etc., if need be. So, well, that's where I ended up, and chances are that French fleet is going to slam into me. I'll have to look at the numbers. I don't know what each side has. I think the French have more points. The Spanish slipped up here into Saguenay. They had an explorer. So they're able, their plan was to withdraw into the deep south further, or maybe up into the Great Lakes area, or just to get out of danger, you know, even if that pisses France off. But mainly to try to get this gold through in another route. And if they can have a port up here where things are pretty valueless, down here there's just too much going on to trust being able to set up a port to send the gold through. It's too easy to get there. If the English, assuming they're at war with Spain, go up here to deal with the Spaniards, well, then they have to split their forces or leave the Caribbean undefended or something. Well, the English had a lot of excess troops, though, because they brought them back from the last turn. The French had to build all the troops. So the French spent more than the English did, but I don't know what the actual size of those forces is going to be. We'll see what it ends up. The French get the first move. Well, the French went for the naval duel, and they lost it. They've run over here. I should probably put some sort of French flag on that to indicate it, just for now. Well, I'll remember. The English, that was too far for them to reach with their troops without leaving this too vulnerable. Now, this is the problem. The French can march up and take the gold. If they do that, then they're not positioned to drop the gold off, and their fleet's not there. And the English might be able to take it back. I think the English have more troops, but I'm not sure. It's a pretty close fight there. Over here, the Spanish made their landing, but they lost a couple of colonists. They're planning on just 1, 2, 3, 4 heading into the northwest and beginning to build a chain so that they can drop in there if need be. Well, when they can. But yeah, they're planning on kind of hiding out. Bad news for the English. Their army is just a little bit smaller than the French one. That means really they don't want to attack. The 1 to 2 table is kind of nasty, as could be expected. Yeah, you could get okay on the 1, maybe even the 2 and 3 results, but the bottom half, you're only going to do well on a 1, and the 4, 5, and 6 would pretty much knock the English out. That gold's important to them, but they've got enough money left that they can launch another attack, maybe with Drake, to try to neutralize the French fleet. It's hard, though, because the naval combat results table is just not that bloody. Meanwhile, these forces not in place to really knock out the French there. Over here on the continent, everybody's fleeing inland. The French, the Spanish here moving into the northwest, just trying to avoid being at risk to a big English stack smacking in. And this feels ridiculous, right? You know, hey, let's abandon the coastal territory, just run up that. It might make sense with a single town or something, but you know, it doesn't make sense with the entire civilization essentially moving back that way. Even the French here, they want to keep this as a port because they do want to reinforce it before the English can get down there. Well, I was disturbed enough to look up whether or not the newer Avalon Hill rules, which I remember better, allowed for something a little different. Basically, can you chase somebody in naval combat? Can you attack them again and again? Can you do anything like that? No, you can only attack them once. So it's very hard to drive somebody off a port. It's very hard, you know, it's the same as it is in the rules I'm playing. I think that I'd like to see the entire naval system reworked in terms of, you know, there should be opportunities for withdrawals, additional movement points, costs to follow, and then maybe engage in combat again, or something along those lines. I do not like the way it plays out because it feels like it's just too easy over a 5-year period to say, yeah, we fought one little naval battle, we each lost 2 ships, and that's it. You know, it's too possible to build a big navy. Land combat tends to be pretty, or the naval combat results table could be reworked. But land combat just tends to be way more decisive. When in fact, that probably would be less decisive in terms of definitely gaining control of territory. I don't know. There's a lot of historical issues or realism issues that I have with this game. But the naval one actually kind of defeats some of the play aspects of the game as well. Alright, well, I'll finish up my sort of administrative crap at the end of the turn. And well, as we end turn 16 and go to turn 17, and hey, notice, we're up to 4 times for colonial activity. And of course, the colonists are all being wiped out here. But, expenditures are probably outweighing production at this point. It's that ugly. Owning stuff on the land is not that terribly valuable. But the problem is Portugal, you know, they're just getting whatever they get off the table here. And that's not enough. They've got 100 and something. The French are still at 400. Now remember back in the days when they were at 600, but building up these navies, fighting, losing colonists all over the place. This is all taking its toll, and we're just seeing this massive decline in the population and everything over here in North America. Of course, it's not so good for the natives either. Nicaragua just got denuded. The Northwest got denuded. All right, well, we only have, 5 more turns left to go. Let's see how it goes.